Alright, Team Yankee fans, this is a fight that you have been waiting for. So, as we are contributing our part to the worldwide campaign, the Red Thunder Firestorm campaign, figure, well, once more time, Lieutenant Tran takes his battered company out. So on this side here, we have one platoon over here. On this side here, we have another platoon, and we have Lieutenant Tran. But lo and behold, we have our attack helicopters. On the Russian side, we have the gray T-72 company, and we also have our green T-72 company with our commander there in the back. And because it's kind of like a game tradition now, we have an actual piece of the Berlin Wall in the middle of the battlefield. It does not block line of sight. It is not a terrain feature. It's just there. Just a way of reminding us about the freedoms that we do have. All right, and the mission is Annihilation, so there are no objectives. So the U.S. rolled higher than the Russians. We go on to turn one. As we conclude the American portion of turn one, the platoon moved up to the edge of the trees to engage with the gray tank company. This platoon stayed where they are to engage with the gray tank company. Lieutenant Tran tried to cross into the woods. Failed. Stuck. That's one less tube shooting. Our Cobras fired on here. Got one hit. Bailed one tank. These guys, they fired 4 dice. Totally missed. These guys fired 2 hits. Glanced off. Yeah, not a very impressive beginning for our American heroes for turn one. How are the Russians going to respond? Stay tuned and find out. So here we are at the end of the Russian half of turn one. The gray tank company passed the blitz roll, moved out, except for that guy who failed his cross-check. The green company failed their blitz roll, moved out, passed cross-checks, except the commander. Nevertheless, all those guys here who were successful went and totally wasted the American platoon here. This is not looking good right now for the Americans. What in the world are they going to do? Because they're being jumped by 9 Soviet tanks at the same time. Stay tuned. And now we're back, ladies and gentlemen, for the American turn 2. The Americans realized that they needed to become a lot more aggressive than they have been. Having lost their first platoon to withering fire from the T-72s, but indeed there was payback. The remaining platoon that was in fighting fired on the gray platoon. Possible 4 hits. They hit 4 separate tanks. 3 were knocked out, 1 bailed. The remaining tank failed its morale check. Scratch 1 T-72 platoon. Now, the American Cobras come in, and they're now hiding behind the woods, but they popped up with their Vulcans to fire on the green tanks. The Russians did fire back with anti-aircraft machine guns. They can't fire in the next turn, but they could still move. They failed. They did hit the Cobras, but failed to damage them, to the point where the Cobras had to go and rearm and refuel, like in another game we know of. So the Cobras hit, they fired their Vulcans, they hit, but again, no results there. So the game's got a little bit more aggressive. And we're going to see how the Russians respond to this. Stay tuned. Okay, the Russians, they had their turn 2. And at this point, they've decided to make a very aggressive move, and that was going from here, swing through cross country, even though they can't fire on Lieutenant Tran's tank, but they are threatening him. The commander decided to fire with his AAMG on the Cobras, to no effect. That's it. So, how will the Americans cope with this? As we come to the end of turn 3, the American turn 3 of Team Yankee. Boy, the excitement just hasn't died. Lieutenant Tran turned his tank to face the oncoming horde, fired with a rate of fire of 2, and he rolled snake eyes, which would have been great in advanced squad leader. Too bad in Team Yankee, it resulted in a big whiff. Now, we did have the other platoon come up, fire, and bailed out the commander's tank. The Cobras just basically turned, fired their Vulcans, hitting everybody, and blowing up one tank. Not enough to cause a platoon check. The Russian commander, in the meantime, fired his AA machine gun, hitting one Cobra, but failing to do any damage. Oh man, what is going to happen in the Russian turn? Stay tuned and find out, Team Yankee fans. Okay, so we're on the Russian half of turn 3. The bailed out T-72 got back in, and now comes the real game changer here. This is the formation commander. This is the remaining American platoons, and to the back of the T-72s we have our Cobras. Now, how in the world to resolve this? Who would get top priority? So, I'm going to make a dice roll to see how the Russian player would go. They go for either Tran, the command tank, or they go after these guys. I'm going to eliminate the helicopters because they are a support unit. So, we're going to go 50-50 here. 1, 2, 3, it's Tran. 4, 5, 6, it's the platoon. And they're going after the platoon. Alrighty then. So, there is no movement. We're just going to go ahead and resolve the issue. Okay. The die roll was made. The Russians decided to attack the American platoon here. They did destroy one M1 tank, forcing the platoon to undergo a morale check. They passed. The Russian commander over here decided to fire with the AA machine guns on the Cobra choppers, and they hit, but other than taking off a few chips of paint, that was about it. So, the Americans are still in the fight, but they are on their last legs, as are the Russians. So, we are now going to turn for America. We just finished the American half of turn 4. Tran and the remaining platoon tank moved to a better firing position to open up on the Russians. The Cobras fired their tow missiles, and they bailed out the commander's tank. These two tanks fired on the remaining 3 tanks of the platoon. They hit all of them, destroying 2 of them. This guy ended up passing the morale check. Go figure. Must be the political officer encouraging him. So now we're going to Russian half of turn 4. The question is, what is the Russian player going to do? Stay tuned. Welcome back, Team Yankee fans. I was checking the rules because this is the sole survivor of the unit, and I looked in the rulebook and it said, hey, they have to take a check at the start of the turn before formation because it's a sole survivor. He rolled a 1. The game is over. The Americans take it. This was a nail biter, and it could have gone either way very easily. So with that, Lieutenant Tran does take the day, but yeah, he lost a lot of tanks in the process. But with the help of the Cobras, over in the Leipzig sector. Good night, good fight. See you next time.